Hi there and welcome back to The Marketing Hustle, which is a podcast where I get to interview founders who run businesses I really wish I could work for. Please, before I get into this, take the time to subscribe so that you hear about future episodes, and do leave us a review because it makes all the difference to help get more amazing speakers on for future shows. Today, I got to chat to Ben Parker, who is the founder of Runna, an app that is genuinely getting the whole of the UK on their feet. I am yet to go on my first Runna run, full disclosure, but I am a customer and I'm so impressed by everything I'm seeing so far. And I'm hearing about it from absolutely everyone. As Ben says, everyone is telling him that he is smashing it. In this conversation, we talked about three really powerful themes. So the first is getting into running and how really this is an app designed both for super endurance, really high performance athletes, but also that first 5K and how you bridge that from a product and marketing perspective. We talked about building a business that is all centered around a passion and how that pulls their whole culture together. And we talked about the changes in operation, in the way you spend money, and the way you think about stuff as you grow, and the crazy 25 times growth last year journey that Runna has been on. I'm so excited to hear what you think. Ben has incredibly kindly created a code for us. So if you use code Marketing Hustle when you sign up to Runna, you'll get a 2-week free trial. And also we get to find out how many of you we've got running as a result of this, which is just going to be such a fun game. So use that to get started if you've been thinking about it already.
This episode is brought to you by Tracksuit, a beautiful, affordable and always-on brand tracking dashboard that helps marketers answer the infamous question, is what we're doing working? The founder, Matt, and his first man on the ground from the New Zealand office, Dan, have become really firm friends. It's a not so secret fact that companies pay £50,000 a year or more for brand tracking, which we all know is comically out of the question, for brands on small budgets. Tracksuit has been built by marketers for marketers and makes it affordable, but also 10 times easier. They survey thousands of people each week from panels of millions around the world to give you full visibility on your brand's health in 30 days. Insights updated every day. Tracksuit is fast becoming the common language for marketers and agencies to measure, understand, and communicate the value of brand building. So check it out at gotracksuit.com or get in touch with me if you've got any questions and I can hook you up to the men in charge themselves.
All right, we were deep in a really interesting conversation I want to jump straight back into around where you put your time when you're really, really busy. How are you thinking about it?
Yeah, no, great question. So I think we center everything that we do at Runna thinking about the product. Yeah. So our goal at Runna is to make the best running coaching service that's ever existed before. And with that in mind, it's all well and good running around telling people about it, thinking about doing an Instagram campaign or an ambassador to work with, or doing a piece of t-shirt to make and sell that t-shirt and all of those things. But ultimately, no one cares about any of those things unless we have an amazing app in the first place. And our kit is only going to be bought by a fraction of our diehard fans. And our diehard fans are the ones that see their lives changed by a great app. Yeah. So 99% of our time needs to be spent on that. And everything else adds back to it. No one's going to use the app in the first place if we don't have ambassadors, we don't have great marketing, we don't talk about it on podcasts or whatever it's going to be. Yeah. But at the same time, I think the best product wins. And in a way, the greatest element of a product like ours, which for those who don't know what Runna is a fully automated running coaching service. And so essentially we use code to deliver running coaching to the masses in a much more affordable and accessible package. The power of that is how smart the engine is and how that changed people's lives. Yeah. And the more runners that we have using the service, the more of their friends who can hear about it. Yeah. And our greatest asset in marketing is our happy customers. Yeah. So therefore, if we can build a feature that makes those customers happier, might be the reason why someone signs up versus not signing up at the end of a free trial. And if they have a great time and enjoy it, they're going to go tell all their friends at their running club. And with that in mind, it always brings it back to I think the best product wins. Yeah. And with that in mind, the majority of the investment money we raise and the team that we grow will always sit on the development side more than the public-facing marketing side. Yeah. However, it's extremely important to get all of those other bits right in parallel. Yeah. And so it's a case of not putting all your eggs in one basket and forgetting about everything else. And it's a business is doing all of these components balanced together. But yeah, it's really tough. And obviously through different phases in time, you have to prioritize your time in different things. And I guess kind of like we're a business that's been through a few investment rounds. And for anyone who's done an investment round, they know that takes up all your time and a bit more than that as well. And it's the most miserable thing that you can do because it's so stressful and it feels like life or death in the moment and all of that. And you manage to find a way to have 90% of your work time put into raising some cash, and you forget or you intentionally deprioritize everything else. And then we're in a position now where we raised some money 4 or 5 months ago and we're in a really healthy position. So we're less focused on that. And we now don't even have time to go for a coffee when investors who might invest in us in a few years' time want to go for a coffee. And it's like, well, no, like we need to actually focus on running the business and building the app to be even smarter and working with great ambassadors of the brand, and they're more relevant than someone with a big bank account. But like that was a very different point in time and values were different then.
Yeah, it's an amazing position to be in.
Yeah, and I'm sure the values will change again. And it might be the case that actually 5 years' time we've built all of these incredible features and you can't add any more to someone's running coaching journey, and it's adapting around their cadence and it's adapting around their menstrual cycle or whatever it is, that like there's nothing left to do and I don't think that will ever happen.
No.
However, if that happened, then I'm sure the focus becomes more on the marketing or more on these other things. But like obviously the relative importance of things change at different points in the business. I think where we are now is that we've built a service that people love, but at the same time we feel that we're only kind of 20% to the way to build that, and no matter how good we are at marketing, if we don't have a great product, it won't go anywhere. And I think relatively we're good at marketing, but it's something that we have a lot to learn, but we are able to keep growing and able to do everything that we're doing because we're marketing a phenomenal product. And there are definitely businesses out there that I've seen who are infinitely better marketers than us, but we're growing our Instagram following faster than they are. And I think it's because our customers just grow it for us. So I think that's the power of maybe prioritizing building something that helps people more than
excellent customer experience. And I suppose one, word of mouth is so powerful for what you do because it's something people talk about.
Yeah, no, I say this analogy all the time, and it's probably a really awful one. But we're doing the opposite of selling cigarettes that like destroys people's lives, and at the same time we're also not selling something like Viagra that no one wants to tell their friends that they're buying. If you
it's a category that you chat about, you're proud of what you're doing, and it's a
meme, isn't it, that you run a marathon and you tell everyone you've ever met about it. And in the same way you doing an interval run this morning in the rain and you sit next to your friend at work, like they will know about it. You'll probably tell you'll probably tell the person you're stood at the zebra crossing with while you're waiting for a minute that you did a workout this morning, and like that's relatively the power that we have. And at the end of the day, then it's the case of making sure that the product that we have not only caters to like the average customer who maybe has a lower set of requirements, but building the service to the hyper user, because the hyper user who's a real running nerd and really wants it to sync perfectly to their niche smartwatch that isn't one of the mainstream brands, and additionally has particularly unusual functionality for this diehard person. If you can convince that person, they're the one that everyone at the running club looks up to. And they're the one that's going to go and talk about it to all their mates, and they're the one who's in the fanciest pair of carbon shoes. And so sometimes it's also making sure that you build the product or build the experience for the right person, knowing who's out there raving about it. And that same hyper user is the same type of person probably who's out there on social media showcasing their journey or with the most Strava followers.
So that's who you obsess over. You're always obsessing over the hyper user because...
I would say that we obsess over like all of the users. Like we're in an interesting position that like, I think a lot of startups are always told to focus on a niche, really build out our business for a niche and serve that one use case and then expand to mass market in the future. And that wouldn't work with our product. If we had built the runner for 10K plans, and all we did was help people on 10K, it wouldn't be very good because you'd have people who want to train 5K, can't use runner. Or you get so good at 10K, now you get excited to train for a half marathon, you can't use runner. So at the same time as building features for the hyper user, we also really focus on building for everyone with a view that that hyper user's got 100 friends who some of them are better runners than them, some of them are weaker runners than them, some of them are less motivated, so they need more motivational features, and some of them have got different watches. So you've got to build to everyone. And so with that in mind, like we've now built essentially the full kind of coaching journey for someone training for their first 5K all the way through to a 250 kilometer ultra marathon. And additionally, the couch to 5K or the kind of first 5K journeys are totally free, with a view that hopefully they get so inspired and enjoy their running journey that they go on to train with us forever and might become a hyper user 5 years later.
Well, we just had a really, really motivating chat about your family who are now like a bunch of athletes. And you were just telling me that they've kind of followed this path. There's evidence that it works.
Yeah, so I was just saying that we're going on a skiing holiday next week, and luckily today's a Friday, and got some annual leave next week, and we're going skiing as a family, which is really exciting. And the evening entertainment, at least one or 2 days of the week, will be an evening run in the Alps, which will be lovely. And I think it's the case that a lot of my family, my elder brother, my dad, my little sister, and my other little sister even, like they've all kind of like dabbled in fitness at different times.
Yeah.
But I think the real thing that they saw was that I was a very ordinary, normal kid at 14, 15, doing loads of sweets, played loads of computer games, had no interest in exercise, and was pretty like didn't know what I wanted to do with life.
Yeah, this I think is such an important story.
No, absolutely. And at the age that I guess I started to like girls, I was like, what do I do here? So I started cycling to school, learning about endorphins, and also started going to the gym with a view that I wanted to look a certain way to, I don't know, women would respect me. That. And I did that, and my journey with exercise very much transitioned over the kind of like years from 15 through to 21, but was very much centered around being big, having a six pack, looking a certain way. And I became very, very happy, very focused, like knew exactly what I wanted to do. And for someone who didn't try at school, didn't apply themselves, I had something that I was like the best at. And also it brought up so much of my confidence. And I went on to play lots of sport at uni, ran the kind of biggest sporting society at university, which was very, very exciting, and almost became a bit of a status within the uni that I was kind of like the strongest guy in the uni gym and all of that. And I loved that attention. And I went on to basically pick a crazy challenge as a way to prove that I could do anything. And I was that identity. So I picked an Ironman and basically did an Ironman for charity, and it went really well. But to the point where I then wanted to sign up and do another one because I knew I could do a little bit better. And as a result, my kind of fitness journey transitioned from being focused around how I looked to how I could perform. But I think all the while, my dad, my sister, various friends all kind of saw me happy. And at the same time, it wasn't anything unfathomable. I was a normal kid who just applied themselves for a long time. And was always kind of sharing that journey through my very small Instagram following. and I mean, that was my life. And at the same time, I guess all the while kind of developing as a coach, kind of as I graduated university, really kind of finding ways to get my friends moving with me. And now have a friendship group on WhatsApp that's called Distance Ks. And that's just the nature of the group chat, and everyone's ran during many half marathons. I think everyone in the group's probably ran a marathon, and not because I'm there like being like, to be my friend, you must run a marathon. But I think it's the case. No, but I think it's the case that like they've seen me run, and that's made me happy, and they've all turned up to parkrun, which is like not impossible and unfathomable, and realised that that's quite fun. And then they've turned up to a 10K race, and that's been able to teach them the same things that I learned, that exercise makes you happy. And the same thing that I think our customers feel as well. And as a result, like I think the thing that we need to do as a business is just reduce the barriers to entry. Like working with a running coach is something that's extremely privileged, is extremely expensive. Conventionally, working with a coach would cost £1,000 a year or £100 a month, or more. And additionally, to go and do that, you've got to find them on Instagram, message them, and they might be a semi-famous person. It's pretty frightening, and have a call with them and tell them that you don't feel very comfortable running and you don't know what pace is.
And there's a huge, there's such an interesting tension in your story and in the product where, like I read a bit about you, and you come across as like quite formidably fit. It's quite terrifying. And I think there's a thing around coaching and performance sport, which feels very intimidating. It's a huge problem about fitness culture. And so there's both this like performance element in you as a person and in the product you've built. And if you're there for the ultra marathons, it's there, and it's going to teach you to be super fast. But also, like, I met you 20 minutes ago, and you've made me want to go for a run. Like there's this really open easiness to you that I think is also inherent in your product. you've got to both serve.
Yeah.
And this is why I think your audience is so interesting. You've got to both serve that super engaged, obsessive.
Yeah.
And yet you've got to do that couch to 5K job and not make me feel intimidated.
Yeah, no, you're completely right. And whereby we identify our customers as like anyone who runs, it's a huge challenge to make sure that we're serving the person who's never run 5K before, while also
different.
telling the sub 3 hour marathon runner that ours is the best service
You're
to get.
still the place
Ours
for
is the
them.
best service to get them faster.
Yeah.
When we look at where we get our customers from in Runner, it's more than half our customers come in through word of mouth.
Yeah.
And so relatively, we don't need to think as much about the marketing we do. Instead, again, it's building a great service and the customers do the marketing.
Yeah.
And obviously, there's a lot more to it than that.
Yeah, let's talk about the other 50%. So product is driving a huge amount of growth, but you grew 25x last year.
Yeah, so we grew,
a
huge amount last year, and hopefully we can grow a similar but probably smaller proportion this year. And when you're smaller, it's a lot easier to grow by big proportions. But yeah, so we see a huge proportion of our customers coming in through performance marketing. So that's doing Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and Google ads, etc. We work with a number of different ambassadors. So these are kind of high profile, public facing individuals on social media.
Yeah.
And the funniest thing about that is that they're now starting to come to us. There was a point in time where we would be messaging someone on Instagram and probably 1 in 20 people we messaged would get back to us. We now have like more people messaging us than we can like onboard, which is a really exciting place. And again, it comes back to like the best product wins, because these people are finding it in the wild and coming to us, and again, working with them. And then one of the kind of key pieces that we've done from day one is working with lots of different businesses, whereby the majority of these are race companies. So loads of people train for a running race. And the thing that a running race needs is a training provider, because what they don't want to do is have all of their runners run out there in the wild, not quite know what to do, get injured or not turn up to the start line because they haven't felt confident to do so.
Yeah.
So it's a really like symbiotic relationship where we can help the customer training for the race. We can help that race have an extra income.
Yeah.
And so that's worked really nicely. And I guess kind of like, hopefully people listening to this in the UK have maybe heard of Runner by now.
Yeah.
And relatively with that in mind, like we're continuing to copy a lot of that and taking that same model out to doing the rest of the world. We've now got customers in 180 different countries, but like the proportion that's growing over in the US is kind of significant, which is really exciting, especially when the market is so much bigger out there.
Yeah. So you're actively pursuing the US, and then the rest of the global growth is organic, or is it like a global strategy?
So we're an English speaking business. And therefore, well, first of all, any customer that's got any question, they can message us at any time. And I think on average, we're back in touch within 2 hours, which is pretty mad, especially when someone's paying £100 for a year, which is like a really affordable price compared to what a conventional coach would cost, which was normally north of £1,000 a year. And you're probably not going to get your coach replying within 2 hours every day of the week.
Definitely not.
So really proud of that, but it is limited to English speaking.
Okay.
We do have customers in countries where English isn't their primary language.
Yeah.
And I think that is because obviously in a lot of these countries, people have 2 languages and English is spoken all over the world. But I think additionally, we deliver kind of numerical coaching, as in, so what that means is we could tell you to run 2K for your warm up, and then you could run your intervals at this pace, and that's a number. And so as a result, a lot of the value is in the numbers, which are translatable.
The product experience has a lot that the language will help with. But you're right. The like absolute fundamentals of it are just numbers.
And the same, you can send it over to your Garmin watch, and your Garmin watch is going to interpret that whatever language you're in.
Yeah.
So we are growing in Germany. We're growing in all these different languages, as you can imagine. But the US is a really big focus for us. And with that in mind, we're already now the recommended training provider of the LA Marathon, the Honolulu, Hawaii Marathon, which is a really exciting example. And I guess kind of like bringing that back to kind of the marketing that we do, it means that we can then take doing some of our team out there, we can get some amazing marketing from one of the best races in the world. We can bring some of our most amazing ambassadors and maybe convince them to join Runner because we can excite them about this amazing race around the world. And so there's all of these different intersections tying back together.
It sounds like you're absolutely flying. There's got to be another side to this story. Like, what have the hard times been?
So we launched the business in March of 2021. We spent the first year basically trading with a very much a primitive solution. It was a website You come on the website, we'd build you a personalized PDF and email it to you 15 minutes later, not
15 months later. It's incredible UX.
15 minutes later. And we did that for about 13 months. And every time we've gone on to raise investments, been extremely hard. Yeah. And so we raised £500,000 via a crowdfund, which was...
And that was to turn it from the PDF model into an app.
Essentially, we had been starting work on that beforehand, but it was very much to help do that and to add a lot of functionality to the app after launching it as well. And then from there, we've had 2 further VC-led investment rounds where we've raised a total of $8+ million to date, which is obviously helps us to grow and to really be able to grow the engineering team and do everything there. All of those investment rounds are extremely hard. I think particularly at a time where relatively startup investment is not easy to get.
Yeah, it's not
and I think at the same time as well, there are a lot of fitness businesses that have struggled. And I think particularly post-COVID, you had Peloton, for example, and other types of fitness businesses that boomed in the lockdown and then came crashing back down when everyone went back to reality. And as a result, I think people use Peloton or investors use Peloton as an example of the businesses at the top of the market and then benchmark the smaller businesses within that off that. And then therefore, if the person at the top comes crashing back down, everyone underneath is as a smaller fraction of that person at the top. So that I think is one of many complex reasons why raising money was hard.
Yeah.
But I think the hardest bit for me anyway, is the case that I am someone who loves to be outdoors. Conventionally, I'm as far removed from an office job running a team of 40 people as you could ever imagine. And now I sit in an office and hopefully inspire all of our team to do great work. But it's
a lot of slack and a lot of emails.
It's a huge personal sacrifice. I was, I guess in the lockdown myself, I was pretty close to being very, very highly ranked within the UK within my kind of Ironman capacity. Yeah. And I've gone backwards or sideways-ish for the last kind of 2 or 3 years, whereby work's been astronomically the highest priority, and it doesn't come without a lot of personal sacrifice. And I've probably got a further receding hairline and more grey hairs than I had a few years ago, and lots of rows with my girlfriend for working too late and all of those things, which is to be expected. But yeah, it comes with a lot of sacrifice, but at the same time, something that I would do 100 times over.
Yeah, and that stuff is real. That you can dismiss it as what you signed up for, but it's
no, exactly. And I think the thing that makes it all worthwhile is that we have the knowledge to know that we are helping people all around the world. When you read the reviews, we have people that go and download us in Australia after seeing an ad, and then they go on to do a first 5K, a year later do their first marathon and tell us how we changed their life. We gave them structure when they were mentally really struggling. And to know that you improved one person's life in the way that people have told us is hard to wrap your head around. And
is this what you say to your girlfriend?
Well, I don't know. My girlfriend's very, very supportive.
Yeah,
I don't need to convince her. But no, it's it comes with a lot of sacrifice, and I had a huge amount of satisfaction seeing the 40 people I would meet with kind of every with all my private sessions. Yeah. And seeing their bodies transform, or seeing their smiles after a PB or whatever it was, and I don't get that now. I don't meet our customers?
Yeah, because you just can't be as close.
Yeah, exactly. So that's frustrating, especially when that's something that really drives me, is helping people. But then having to remind myself that we have more people training with us than you can fit in Wembley Stadium, and they will
keep coming back to that
they will open their phone and they will have a good day because of that. That's really nice. And obviously I do meet our customers when we have events or whatever it is, and that really helps. Especially you go through hard weeks sometimes. You have with a team every now and again there's people issues, and those are the worst things to have to deal with, because a member of staff who's not performing and having to have those hard conversations or whatever that entails is a miserable thing, especially when you care deeply about the people that work for you guys or work for you. It comes with lots of ups and downs, and at the same time I would never recommend a startup to anyone. But I would still go back in time and do it again, if that makes sense.
For the right person.
Yeah, as in I would do this journey all over again, but I also wouldn't recommend my twin to do that, if that makes sense. Like the only reason why it's possibly fathomable is because it luckily ended up where we are now.
How have you found, like, it sounds like you went on a big self-development journey as you got really into training, but you must have also been on a kind of similar journey as you've now learned how to run a business. Like, you're getting pro at lots of different things. How have you taught yourself all of this?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the answer to that, absolutely. I think like I definitely have a very addictive personality. The thing is with anything new, you don't need to know it all at the start. So what I mean by that is that like when I started Runna, I knew nowhere near as much as I know now. And if I had to do the job I do today, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yeah.
But I was able to do the job on day one of Runna with what I knew on day one. And day one taught me what I knew for day two.
Yeah.
And then on day two, I was like kind of okay to do it and relatively better than I was on day one. And like, I guess that same thing happens like over and over again. And we're probably on like day 1,000.
Yeah.
And doing, even in the past 2 weeks alone, like I won't go into the details, but like we've had all kinds of things to challenge you and to talk to different people about as to what the answer is here. And sometimes you're trying a solution out and looking back on it, was that the best thing we could have done? And I think all credit to my co-founder. Like, first of all, he's very, very good at giving feedback, a very, very, very smart individual. But I think both of us are very much like not egotistical people. And after every pitch with an investor, after every session we have of doing something new and different or whatever, it's like, do you have any feedback for me? Do you have any, like anything I could have done differently? And in the same way, I'm way better at doing my job than I was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm nowhere near as good as I will be in 2 years' time. And I guess like it just comes to like being prepared to accept that I'm not good enough and learning from smarter people.
So do you, if your approach before was YouTube and induction sessions, do you have a kind of similar diet plan for your how to be a better founder?
I don't read at all. I listen to a lot of audiobooks and podcasts.
Yeah.
So I would say those have been two of the learning pieces.
Yeah.
I think the biggest one is just getting on with it and doing it.
Yeah.
Guessing. And I think like...
Guessing, but then reflecting.
Yeah, guessing and then reflecting, but it's like trusting your gut. And I was actually chatting about this on a run this morning with an ambassador. And we were both chatting about imposter syndrome and has she felt that as she's inspiring hundreds of thousands of people with her personal journey, and the same with the kind of coaching that we're doing. And I would very much say that there was a point in time where I really struggled with the idea that like, I'm probably one of the biggest running coaches in the UK right now, and that's really exciting. But at the same time, I'm not the best runner in the UK right now. And so like there was a point in my mind that I was like, oh, is this okay? And I think the same with reference to business. Like I've never managed anyone before this, starting out on this journey. So surely I'm not the best person to be doing one of the two people leading Runna on the next phase of whatever we've got coming. But then at the same time, kind of like, there's also no one in the world who understands Runna like my co-founder and I do. Yeah. And I like, might sound a little bit arrogant to say it, but there's also no one in the world that could do as good a job as Dom does, or as what I do. And it's not because I'm an expert marketeer or an expert salesman or an expert whatever, but like I get Runna and all of the context behind it more than anyone could ever do. And I think that then like gives me the context and gives me the confidence to not worry about some of those things. And the confidence just to guess, the confidence just to try. And relatively be prepared to make mistakes and know that like we've got a great ecosystem and team and environment around us that like everyone is out of their comfort zone to some extent and we're all learning together. And when I'm managing someone and doing whatever it is, I want them to tell me how I'm doing as their manager. I want them to tell me how the team's working around them and whether the team's set up in the right way and all of these different things. And I guess it's just communication. And the same thing that we need to be good at for a good relationship and the same thing we need to be good at for a good working relationship. But yeah, I think there's 101 things to do. And really just doing it. Like the best practice or the best way to learn is by doing.
My first boss said to me that I always say to myself on those days, no one can do your job better than you, but you can always do your job better.
Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of the psychology of it. It's a really nice way of just like I don't need the imposter syndrome. Like I am in the right shoes, but also that humility is so important.
I've really had a very similar, not only have I been on this roller coaster journey, but so have our team. Like some of our earliest members of staff have like come into the business with less on paper experience and gone on this kind of roller coaster journey just like I've done.
Yeah.
And now they're managing loads of people and they haven't got the same management experience and they haven't worked with external brands as amazing as the ones that we get to work with, and having to be on these calls and be on these meetings and plan these campaigns. And it's like, sometimes they'll have wobblies and come back to me with it. And it's like, there's no one on the other side of the call who could sit in your role and do better than you can. And I think it's not that just like, you've got to be a hype man, but you've actually got to believe it to truly be able to inspire and get that person to really believe it themselves.
Yeah.
And I think it's the case that the reason why we're where we are in a relatively short period of time, having grown as fast as we are, is because of all those cogs of all the individuals who've just developed and done amazing work as well. And I think it's down to them that we're where we are, and it's all of us learning together, which is really exciting. And I think it comes back to having a really nice environment, which relatively fosters everyone doing good work. And I said it before we got started, but we have this really funny thing whenever I meet anyone, they tell me runners everywhere, or runners doing really well, which is really hilarious because they don't know whether runners doing really well. They just think people are talking about it and therefore it might be doing well. But the funnier one than that, one layer deeper, is that everyone says, oh, like, you come into a job interview with us. And I'm like, so why do you want to work at Runner? And they'll be like, oh, it's just got such a great culture. And I'm like, I literally look at them and I'm like, you have no idea. Like we could all be miserable. Yeah. But for some reason, like that seems to be out there in the wild. And I think it's like, we do have a great culture, but I should tell them that. And that's why they should want to work at us.
The question should be, tell me about your culture.
I should tell them that we've got a great culture and they should be, oh, that's great. I want to work there. But the fact that like, whether it's doing everyone's one connection away from someone and they've met someone who works at Runner and they say they love it, or whether it's we share the journey publicly on TikTok or whatever it is.
It's just a feeling of intimacy. Yeah. It's just you guys being out there. We had exactly the same thing, and everyone would say they wanted to work for us because we had this great culture, and then they turn up and there'd be this kind of like week one moment where we do have a great culture, but it's not quite the culture that it looks like.
Yeah.
So great is not like a catch. There's not great culture and bad culture. There's lots of different types of great culture. And we'd have these kind of funny meetings at the end of week one where people would sort of say, like, it's not quite what I thought it was going to be. And we were like, well, can you unpack a bit more? What do you mean? They're basically like, it's quite hard. Yeah. It's like, so you meant that it looked fun and chill. Yeah. And actually it's fun and we work fucking hard and we have really high targets and we're really ambitious. And they were like, I didn't really.
Do you know, I think that's probably the exact same vibe that everyone has with us, which is like, it's exactly as fun as they thought it would be, but it's like way harder work, but that's exactly what they also want because then it makes it like rewarding.
And that's why they're there and it all comes out good, but we've had to really change our interview process. So our last round is now this like slightly farcical conversation where we just go, but it is really hard. Yeah. You know that it's going to be really hard, right? Until they sort of say yes 3 times, then we're like, cool, welcome to the gang.
No, absolutely. And I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think like relatively getting people bought into what you're doing is actually sharing why you're doing that in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think it's that like we want people to work with us at Runner because they genuinely want to make the world a happier place through running. And if they are on board with that reason in the first place, that's going to mean that they can do the work that they're doing, whatever niche part of the business that's on, knowing that it's part of a genuinely good thing for the world and a good thing for the people that they touch and for their friends who use Runner and for whoever it is. And I think that makes us all have that feeling of satisfaction that I get as a coach. And so, I think kind of like staying true to what you're truly doing and keeping everyone feeling that same thing and really keeping them close to that mission of the business is super key.
Yeah, so centering.
Because at the end of the day, like if you can look after your staff and make them, feel brilliant, that then gets trickled through to the customer. Because like I don't talk to our customers every day, but like the comical marketing email or whatever it is written from the heart by the person who genuinely cares.
Yeah.
And so making sure that everyone at each kind of phase of the business feels in that same way is so key. And I think that's also what means that when there's a busy time in the business, no one's there kind of being like, oh, I can't work anywhere beyond 5 o'clock because like they're all doing one thing.
Because it matters.
It matters to them. And there's lots of different ways we can do that. And one of which is that everyone who works at Runner owns a piece of Runner. Which is doing so key because it's not then they're just like working hard for the 2 blokes who founded the business, and instead it's like they're working hard for themselves and for the customers, and it's a we thing. It's not an I and whatever.
Yeah, that's really powerful.
and I think like being a team is just the most important thing. And at the end of the day, the culture is what we all build together. The culture is the new employee that you onboard and you pass in the interview process and what they add to the business.
Yeah, the culture is made by every single person in the business. It's not top down. How has you've raised a lot of money? How has having a lot of money changed the way you think about the business and the way you do marketing?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, we've raised a lot of money on paper in terms of, so we've raised, like I said, around about £8 million, which is doing an enormous amount of money.
It's an awful lot of pounds.
I don't have £8 million personally, just to clarify. Like I'm a relatively like cash poor person. But I guess kind of like everything's grown a little bit beyond the day before. We didn't kind of like go viral on TikTok one day and then have this enormous business and everything was wildly out of control. That's maybe what the business looks like from an outside perspective when they don't really know what's going on.
That's those people who are like, you're smashing it.
We're nearly 3 years old since launching the business.
Yeah.
And no 1 month has been drastically different to the month before. We've just continuously grown at a really healthy pace for those 3 years. And at the same time, we raised £500,000. A year later, we raised an 100K angel check to start with. We raised 500K, then we raised £2 million, and then we raised £5 million. So like proportionally to the previous amount of money, it's not so crazy. And having a £2 million bank account for a year and running a business like that was crazy and daunting jumping into that from day one. But we also got to that from having £500,000 for the year that ran up to that point.
Yeah, so it's a drip.
It's continuously a drip. And in the same way that like during the partnerships that we strike, we started off partnering with the smallest racers that you could ever imagine who wanted to share our very basic primitive service, and we would pay them a small commission because we had no upfront cash to pay them.
Yeah.
And that scaled to being not the smallest races, but to small races. And gradually over time, we got to bigger races that were close to us from one connection away or whatever it was. And by the end of year 2, we're partnering with the biggest races in the UK, and now we're partnering with the biggest races in the US. And again, on day 1, if we had been put on a call with the LA Marathon, we'd have shat our pants and probably had a meltdown. But like talking to the LA Marathon's not that much harder once you've talked to the Hackney Half Marathon, and once you've talked to the local Richmond Half Marathon, then you've talked to like the thing before that and the thing before that, and like relatively spending investor money is very similar. Like it's
you just get better and better at it.
Well, you just get more used to the numbers.
Yeah.
Doing like hiring your first member of staff is absolutely crazy. Like doing signing this piece of paper that agrees to spend this many thousands of pounds over the year, and you've got to hope that you make some money to keep paying them at the end of the year. Like that's crazy. But you do that during the year, and you gradually add people to it as a business does well. And now we're in a position that we pay 40 salaries full time and another 20 part time today, which is infinitely more money than our investment money pays for, but at the same time we've also got all these happy customers that keep sending us some money as well, which means that we can add to it and make the business better. That like relatively the next time we raise money it will be 10-20 million, but like, and those are humongous numbers of money that I have no idea what that actually means in practice, but it's just a little bit more than before.
It's a little bit more,
and like
the plan will stretch.
It's the same like when I built up to train for my first marathon, I had to run a little bit more than I did the time before. Like everything in life is the same. Like getting good at chess or running or the gym, you just got to keep doing it, doing a little bit better than you did before. And it's the same with running a business. It's the same with hiring team members and spending investor money and hiring more money. It's just getting a little bit better.
Does money feel a little bit, so you're running further and further and the distances feel more trivial. I know this, right? Like you do more of something and so you go, a marathon doesn't feel like so much in my head.
After you complete it.
And as you get closer to it, you kind of change the goalpost. If you apply that to the same process of raising money, it's kind of an interesting parallel. Does that mean that as the money gets bigger, it sort of feels more like, are you spending money in a different way?
Well, absolutely. In the way that like, for whatever reason, 2 years ago, imagine I had to get an Uber between 2 meetings because it was the only way in hell you could have made it between these 2 meetings. They're really important meetings. We'll do that. I paid for it personally and I was like, couldn't really afford an Uber.
Yeah.
Whereas like, I've had days where I've had like multiple black cabs and
just because
it's
like, what has to happen.
Take a photo of the receipt, email it to the finance email, like don't think about it for a minute again. The COO, we don't have a CFO, but the COO kind of looks after that. Like it's all okay. Yeah. That's a menial sum of money given that like if we get a deal over the line that makes hundreds of thousands of pounds, like it's worth it for a £10 taxi.
Yeah.
So absolutely. But at the same time, the thing that you have to do, I think, as a person is be able to get back out of being in this fast-paced business and back into like reality, whereby like relatively in work, if you can optimize and get 2 minutes more out of something or whatever, that's really valuable, especially if you're working with people whose time are really valuable. Doing developers are very expensive people. You want to maximize on their output, and the same with doing high profile public facing individuals. But then like, I still need to make sure that like I live a normal life. I don't have a huge salary that can justify living my own personal life in that same way. So it very much is like jumping into reality at the end of the day sometimes.
And allowing yourself presumably to have bits of time where you don't optimize.
Yeah,
or
I mean,
you don't strike me as a man who doesn't optimize moments.
Well, I think I optimize in my own life for like happiness.
Yeah.
And I don't like, I think I'm quite lucky that I'm very much not financially motivated. I'm very much motivated by just like having more time to go and exercise more. And the only reason why I want more money is so I can like afford to like service my bikes and buy bicycles. But like, if Runna does so well that it makes so much money, like I'll just buy some bicycles and buy some bicycles for my friends and doing whatever. Like that's kind of like the only thing that like I really need money for. And like I'm very lucky that it wasn't the case at the start, but very lucky that I have a salary that like sustains my life now. But I don't have huge expenses. I don't ever want a Rolex watch. I want to have the best Garmin watch I can have, and I want to have nice carbon shoes. And it's quite helpful that I get sent lots of shoes in the post now.
Great.
But like, yeah, I think like you have to get comfortable spending money faster, because like if we got hung up on the decision of spending 5K on something, which during the first time we spent 5K, I can tell you exactly what it was. And it was filming our crowdfunding video for that campaign that went on to raise 500K. So it was a good use of money, but we didn't have 5K to spend. So that was absolutely daunting. And imagine if we made this video that doesn't raise any money and complete waste of time. That's crazy. But at the same time, like we spent 10 times that on a really interesting campaign in January. And we did that a lot quicker, or came to the conclusion of spending that money a lot quicker than we did during 3 years earlier. But at the same time, so as a result, I think we have to just accelerate the comfort that we have spending money. And so do the team around us. Like, and we need to reduce our layers of approval on people below us spending money as well, because otherwise, like, we don't empower the team to be as fast moving as they were at the start, which was such a key reason in why we are where we are now. And like, imagine if the threshold was like spending £1,000 needs approval from three whatevers. Like, when you're a business that's spending millions of pounds a year versus spending £10,000 a year, like you need to have, if you're spending 2 million a year, you need to have whatever that is, 2,000 approvals to spend £1,000. Like, impossible. And so, but at the same time, you also don't want to become a big business that wastes money, because then you'll be a dead business. And so finding the balance with all these things is really complicated. And you've almost just got to find a way to like get to the end of the day with it and be like, yep, the business is what you're doing, forget about it as much as you can. And it's not always easy. But I think for me, having exercise and people to exercise with is a really good way just to like switch off from the stresses. And again, I think that's where like it's a nice business to be doing, that like on the weekends or whatever, like I'll go running with friends or whoever it is, and obviously talk about Runna or whatever it is, because that's like being a founder, you can't ever completely switch off from it, but like it's also something that like makes, I know that running and exercise makes my life better, and really a helpful way to switch off from all of those stresses that you think about. And nice. But I think at the same time, there's so many stresses that happen, and the number of them is more than we had 2 years ago, but we have more people to deal with the stresses.
More people and more resilience.
So like relatively, it's very rare that I've made a decision that hasn't been encouraged or looked at by someone else in the business, so I can have more confidence that I'm not just crazy man making the wrong choice.
Yeah, a little bit more teamwork. Got one final question.
Yeah.
What is one thing that someone listening to this can help you with?
Someone listening to this can help me with? That's a really good question. I think like we've got a really good idea what we think people want to be happy, healthy runners. And we have a good communication with our customers, and people tell us what they want and what they think. But at the same time, if someone's listening to this and checks out Runner and thinks, oh no, it's too daunting or it's not good for this reason, like tell us. Because like we have, I think it's in week 4, everyone gets a little nudge and asks them what they're thinking about and what they love from Runner and what they want next to be added. But at the same time, it might be that from wherever they are, whether that's a different country or a different background or whatever it is, like what's their barrier to entry to running? And they might look at Runner like I look at Weight Watchers, and if that's the case, I want to know, and I want to make sure that we can.
It's really interesting. What's the unspoken feedback? Who's not telling you?
Yeah, and I want to know why. If you don't run, like why not? And is there any way that we could build something that would make you run? Because like running and exercise makes me a happier person, and I want to make whoever's listening to this who doesn't like running, who doesn't like exercise, give it a go. Because like no one who's ever taken up exercise is like being like, oh, I regret that. I'm doing New Year's resolution is going to become like I'm going to get less fit, and that will make my life better. Like no one's ever said that, and with that in mind, it's kind of like crazy there are people out there who don't start, and we want to keep making Runner easier to help someone start with that. And we have very few people who do our Catch to 5K journey and then be like, I'm happy with just doing Catch to 5K. But at the same time, start with something really kind of achievable and motivating, and who knows where you can go from there. And I think like anyone that you've ever seen do something impressive started doing something very normal and then made it a little bit better. And so therefore, like, don't think that just because you can't run a marathon, you're not a runner or whatever it is. Like, nothing is too small to start, and just starting is the most important piece.
Amazing. Well, you've kindly offered a 2-week trial.
Yeah,
so a shout out to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So if anyone wants to try Runner, anyone who's listened to this and been inspired, or you're that person who's never ran before, if you use the code marketinghustle, all one word, you'll get a 2-week free trial, and obviously let us know how you get on. And anyone training with Runner can message us in the support section, and we're there to help and help you on your way to being a happy, healthy runner.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. I'm sorry. It's now pouring with rain. I could hear the rain.
I didn't even notice.
I was like,
at least it's this way around.
Thank you so much for listening. I really enjoyed that conversation, and I hope you did too. Please do leave a review, number 1. Number 2, subscribe. And number 3, DM me on LinkedIn to let me know what you think and who you'd like me to speak to next. Join us in a couple of weeks for our next episode, where we'll be talking to another founder who runs a business I wish I worked for.